Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are kicking off week 6 of the college football season with our picks and preview show for the Thursday night DFS slate, Thursday, October 3rd. We've got a nice little 2-game slate that kind of coincides with Thursday night football, which I don't mind at all. I love to have college football on the same time as NFL. I think it makes for great viewing when you can flip back and forth between the two. So really excited about this 2-game slate. Should be 2 pretty good games. Some definitely unique things about these 4 teams that we need to talk about. So we're going to break it all down here for you, go over both the games, tell you what you can expect from each team, and tell you how you should be building your DFS lineups for this Thursday night slate. Now, our episode for the Saturday main slate will be coming out also. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so that way you can be with us for that show. And then also we're going to be covering the other slates as well, the Saturday night slate, the Friday night slate, as well as the rest of the college football season. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so that way you can be with us here for all that. And if these videos helped you out, please hit the like button on YouTube. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. And if you're listening on audio, rate and review the show. All right, without further ado, that's a minute on the intro. That's more than enough time. Let's go ahead and dive into. All right, so game number 1 on the slate is a battle in the Sun Belt, aka the Fun Belt, between Texas State and Troy. This is the higher scoring game of the two, according to Vegas. Texas State is currently 14-point favorites in this one. The total is 57.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 36-22 in favor of the Bobcats. I don't round off on the implied totals because you can't go out and actually score 0.25 of a point in a football game. So 36-22 is your implied total rounded off. And this is a game environment that you're definitely want to get a lot of guys from. In terms of setting up game stacks, I think this one is a lot easier to stack than the other one. The problem is that generally speaking, the players in this game are more expensive than the other one. So let's go ahead and talk about the Texas State side. So Texas State has the best quarterback on the slate, in my opinion. It's Jordan McLeod. He is a transfer from James Madison. He's really good at football. He throws, he runs. He's a part of a very up-tempo offense that gets the ball out of his hands quick at Texas State. Really fits his skill set quite well. And the statistics bear that out. Every game against FBS competition so far this season, he has scored 30 or more DraftKings points. And that's notable because you always want to get at least 3 times the value of your salary for a DraftKings quarterback or really any position. And so sitting at $9,000, the target for McLeod would be 27 points. And he's done that in every game against FBS competition. His team is projected to score 36 points in this one, which means that they're going to score roughly 5 touchdowns. He absolutely has the upside to hit that 27-point mark, absolutely has the upside to get even more than that as well. He's just the best quarterback play on the slate, in my opinion, and I cannot stress that enough. At the running back spot, Texas State does have a workhorse back, and that's Ismail Mahdi. What's interesting, though, is that his box scores have not really shown what they were last season. And what I mean by that is last year, Mahdi broke off a lot of really long runs, and he hasn't really done that this year. He's not breaking off a long run more than 25 yards. Really has only scored 1 touchdown as well. So his overall production is down from where it was last year. But all that really has done is just depressed his price tag. And I think that that's a really good spot for Mahdi. The fact that he's coming in fairly cheap, the fact that he, is due for some positive regression in terms of the explosive runs, in terms of the touchdown potential. And really, he is the workhorse back. He's really the only guy from this backfield I'm going to be super interested in. In each of the last 2 games, which have been pretty competitive, 3-point and 1-point margins, no other running back saw more than 6 carries, and Mahdi saw 14 and 17. So really, Lincoln Pair, the backup running back, he is getting the second most carries on the team, but it's hard to get excited over him when in a close game it's going to be a significant advantage to Mahdi. I don't really buy the need to play a running back 2 here on this slate. Now, for the receiver position, this is where it gets a little bit messy for Texas State. So last season and this season, Joey Hobart has been their wide receiver 1 quite clearly. He's had 17 targets over the last 2 games. He's had 2 games of more than 20 DraftKings points. He is just pretty solid. He's going to get a lot of volume. He's really good. No complaints about him. In my opinion, he is the top wide receiver play on the slate when you look at all 4 teams. Now, where it gets interesting is after that. So Jaden Williams, little guy out of the slot. He has had 18 targets over the last 2 games, which is 1 more than Joey Hobart. And to me, that makes him very playable because, again, these last 2 games, those are the ones that I'm going to be banking everything on because those were the close games against FBS competition, right? They were against Arizona State, which was a big matchup on a Thursday night against a Power 4 team, and then against Sam Houston, which was an in-state rivalry. So, if you're getting usage in those games for Texas State, then that means that you're a guy that they pretty much have plans for moving forward in their offense. So Jaden Williams would be the second guy that I would want to play, but don't sleep on Cole Wilson. He was their wide receiver 2 last year. He was supposed to be their wide receiver 2 coming into this season. He hasn't been great, but he's still starting. He's still playing a large role in the offense. And so I'm going to continue to kind of play him just as leverage because I think a lot of people are going to jump to play Jalen Williams. I think a lot of people are going to jump to play Chris Don Jr., who had a huge game against Texas San Antonio, really hasn't done a whole lot since. He's not like a super full-time player. He doesn't play every snap. So I would much rather play Wilson than Don, even though I think more ownership is going to go to Don because he's been more productive. And then Bo Sparks is going to play a little bit of snaps as well. But to me, he's really just a GPP dart throw, like a guy that you're throwing into a lineup hoping he can break off a long touchdown or something like that. He's not as consistently involved in the offense as Williams or Hobart or even Cole Wilson. And then you've got Connor Fox at tight end. Plays a decent amount of snaps, but he's not an explosive player. He's not really a guy they look to in the red zone either. Hasn't scored a touchdown yet this year. $3,400. He would be a very touchdown-dependent GPP play, in my opinion. Now, on the Troy side, this is where things get wonky. They have a super weird quarterback situation. So Bruce Crowder, who was priced at $7,700 on DraftKings, was the starter at the start of the season. He got hurt in the Memphis game and sat against Iowa. And in that game, Matthew Caldwell he played the rest of the game against Memphis. He started the game against Iowa. Wasn't all that good. Now, Crowder came back after the Iowa game and started against Florida A&M and UL Monroe, but Crowder got injured in the UL Monroe game and ended up going back to the bench. And in that game, they played Tucker Kilcrease for the rest of the game. He's only $5,700 on DraftKings. It is totally unknown as I record this whether or not Goose Crowder is actually going to start this game or if it's going to be, I would assume, Tucker Kilcrease, considering they just played him over Caldwell. To me, the biggest difference is price tag, not actually like expectations. Kilcrease is a running quarterback. He did have 9 rushing attempts for 55 yards in that game against UL Monroe. He only attempted 10 passes. So really the offense changes big time if Kilcrease is in there. But I kind of think Kilcrease is an option because this is going to be a game that's going to feature a lot of points, a lot of possessions, and running quarterbacks in games like that are situations that we want to target. So I'm very interested in Kilcrease if he does get named the starter. I'm very mildly interested in Goose Crowder if he does get named the starter because he's just so much more expensive. At the running back spot, so Damian Taylor to me is a buy low option. He had the big game against Florida A&M, had a pretty big game against Nevada in week 1 as well. But he's getting a ton of carries, just hasn't really turned it into production outside of those 2 games. And so I really think this is a pretty good spot for him at $5,700 against the Texas State team that got ran on by Arizona State quite significantly, that got ran on by Sam Houston State quite significantly. So I do think this is a pretty good spot for Damian Taylor. And if you don't want to play Taylor, Gerald Green, yes, Gerald Green, like the NBA player. He is a backup that is going to see carries. Last game, Taylor had 17 carries. Green had 13. So if you're looking to play any of the RB2s on this slate, I definitely think the closest battle between them is between Taylor and Green is $1,000 cheaper. So I definitely think I'm going to be getting both of those guys in my DraftKings lineups. Now at the wide receiver position, Devontae Ross for Troy is going to project well. Seriously, if you're using an optimizer, using projections, they're going to have him really, really projected well because he has 3 huge games so far this season. Has a game of 54, has a game of 40, has a game of 26. Here's the issue. The passing volume is very troubling if Tucker Kilcrease is a quarterback. Because Kilcrease is a quarterback, he's going to run more. They're not going to throw the ball as much. Like you saw in the UL Monroe game, they only attempted 10 passes. Well, Ross did catch 3 of those. He was targeted 4 times. So if there is only 10 passes being attempted, he's going to have a huge volume of it. But the question becomes, is there going to be enough passing volume with Kilcrease under center that Devontae Ross can get enough targets to have another big game? I think that's kind of to be determined, but I do know he's going to be super popular because a lot of people are just going to look at that fantasy points per game, look at that game log, not know the context, and click them. And so I think it would be kind of, if Kilcrease is starting, kind of a sharp play to fade him. But I don't know. There's not a whole lot of other wide receiver players on this slate that are cheaper and look better from a production standpoint. The other 2 starting receivers in this offense are Higgins and Beeson. They're the only other 2 that have double-digit catches on the season. But like I said, if there's going to be Tucker Kilcrease at quarterback, there's not going to be a lot of passes. And if Ross already has 40% of the targets, then how much are Higgins and Beeson getting? Not much. To me, they would be very touchdown dependent if Kilcrease is the starting quarterback. If we do get Goose Crowder, That definitely makes all three wide receivers a little more playable, in my opinion. All right, that does it for game number 1. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather and talk game number 2. Now, before we get on with our second game, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm recording this on a Tuesday. This slate starts on a Thursday, and in between the main slate show and the actual kickoff, there's a big gap as well. So sometimes opinions change, things change. If you want to get my thoughts on any updates, anything like that, make sure you follow me on there. I'm more than happy to answer any lineup questions or start sit questions if you throw them my way. Also, I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Basically, if you want to be in a community of a lot of really smart, really good people to talk DFS for all different sports, join the Discord. It's always popping with people talking lineups, plays, picks, and then sweating it out together. It's a blast. It's a great community, and I cannot recommend it enough. And then also, if you do want to know who makes my lineups for each and every DFS slate for the college football season, head on over to my Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I will be posting my core plays in there. And I'm not just going to sit here and guarantee that you can win thousands of dollars playing them. That's not how it works. Anybody who says that is just straight up lying to you. What I can guarantee is that you can get well-researched, well-thought-out plays that take into account X's and O's, ownership, strategy, salary, roster construction, and really help improve your own process for college football DFS from a knowledgeable source. Also, if you're looking to try anything new this season, maybe it's a new DFS site, new sportsbook, new player prop site, head on over to signupexpert.com/Mike's Picks. We're partnered with SignUpExpert, and what they do is they get you the best promo codes and offers for new users, and they will even sync to your location and show you what is legal in your state or province. So if you're looking to try something new, give those offers a shot. All right, let's go ahead and continue now with the game that has, to me, in my opinion, the much more wider range of outcomes. That is Sam Houston State at UTEP. Like Texas State, Troy, that to me, I just see is very likely to be a high-scoring game, very likely be a game where Texas State is leading most of the way. I just don't really see there being a whole lot of variance in the outcome in that game. This one I do. Sam Houston is currently 10.5-point favorites with a total of 50.5, meaning the projected total is about 30-20 in favor of Sam Houston. Now, what makes Sam Houston interesting is how they have operated their offense this season. It has been drastically different from how they have operated their offense in previous seasons. Right now, they are playing with Hunter Watson at quarterback, and he is a big time, and I mean big time, running quarterback, so much so that there's been so little passing volume in this offense. Sam Houston State ranks 125th in pass rate in the nation. If you inverse that, that means they rank 10th in the nation in rush rate. They're almost running as much as like the Service Academy teams, UNLV and UCF, which is saying a lot. So I really do think that this is a pretty good spot to target Watson in a game where his team is favored, where he's going to get a ton of rushing attempts. And, in 3 of his 4 starts, he's had over 20 fantasy points. Actually, correct that. 4 out of 5 starts, he's had over 20 fantasy points. Missed one there. And, he's hit 100 rushing yards in back-to-back games. So I do think there's a ton of upside here. And I think the game flow is about what we would want it to be for a running quarterback. And really, I think you can play him unstacked because he's going to do so much in terms of the rushing game that you don't really need to worry about the passing volume a whole lot. Now, at the running back spot for Sam Houston, Jay Ducker has been their guy. He's been the lead running back in the last 3 games, all of which have been over 14 carries. He's been fairly efficient in them. New Mexico State, he really got bottled up, but he's been pretty good in the other 2. To me, he's the guy you want to target. Gentry and I always struggle with this name. Harbisek. Yeah, Gentry and Harbisek were their key runners last year. Just really haven't gotten going a whole lot this year, haven't really been super productive. And then you've got McKinney, who really kind of operated as the RB2 recently. 7, 11, 10, and 9 carries in the last 4 games. So while Gentry and Harbisek have the history in this program, Ducker is clearly the RB1, and I think McKinney really would be the RB2 in my opinion. At the wide receiver spot, it's really weird, just super weird. Quavez Humphreys literally has had 2 huge games, but literally taken 2 goose eggs in the last 2 weeks where he did not record a catch. So it's really just hard to get behind a guy that's that boom or bust. But if you're playing GPPs, that's the exact kind of profile you want to target, right? You want to target a guy who's going to be boom or going to be bust. Just don't get mad at me when he does end up with a goose egg. Their actual best receiver to me is Noah Smith. He was by far their best receiver last year. He just hasn't really gotten going this year because they haven't had a whole lot of passing volume, but they will use him in the run game as well. It's really really easy to get him the football, and he's really explosive when he has it. At least he was last year. He just hasn't done a whole lot this year. So I'm willing to buy low on the price tag on Noah Smith and hope that he gets it back before conference play starts. We're going to start getting these Tuesday and Wednesday slates with all these Conference USA teams in a few weeks. He's going to be a guy that I'm probably going to be playing a lot on there if he ends up getting it going starting the next few weeks. And then lastly, Ife Adeyi was this team's wide receiver 1 back when Sam Houston was an FCS team. They've made the jump to FBS, and he hasn't really been able to capitalize on it since, but he is certainly the third most involved player on this list. You have Smith, that involved all the time guy. You have Humphreys, the boomer bust by. Adeyi is another guy that plays all the snaps. I really wouldn't consider anybody else in this wide receiver room, just again because they have such a low passing volume. On the UTEP side, Cade McConnell is now the starter. He has been declared the starter after coming in relief in week 4 against Colorado State. And look, I think he's okay. His team's going to be trailing. Like in terms of passing volume on this slate, pure passing volume, he probably ranks second out of the 4 projected starters. It would be McLeod and then McConnell and then Watson and then Kilcrease. So you're going to get a lot of pass attempts from McConnell. Whether or not he has success is going to determine whether or not he has fantasy success. But you're going to get volume from him in the passing game, which you're not going to get from some of these other quarterbacks. At the running back spot, Javon Jackson is literally the only active running back on DraftKings to record a carry. So he's the only one that you would have any interest in, but his team's 10.5 point dogs. He hasn't been super efficient this year, hasn't broken off any explosive this year, haven't scored a touchdown this year in the run game, scored one in the receiving game. So it's hard to really get excited about him. I just think there's other better running backs out there on this slate, and I would rather target this UTEP passing game because the one good news with UTEP is they do have a lot of passing volume, and they've got 3 real clear guys that it goes to. Kenny Odom has been their most productive receiver, followed by Cam Thomas, and then followed by Jaden Smith. And I will give DraftKings credit. They pretty much priced them in accordance to their production, in accordance to their target shares. The one thing I will say is that Smith has 21 catches and has only scored 1 touchdown. Cam Thomas has 26 catches, only scored 1 touchdown, whereas Odom has 14 catches, but he scored 3. So Odom is definitely a little bit more boom or bust. But the reason why I would bump Odom ahead of the other 2 is that he did have his big game when Cade McConnell was at quarterback. So, you're getting the connection with McConnell and Odom, but still Thomas and Smith are going to be involved big time in the game. I'm definitely going to be targeting this UTEP passing attack. Even if it's not using the UTEP quarterback, I'm going to be targeting the UTEP receivers just because there's so little other offenses on this slate that we're going to get passing volume to wide receivers. All right, so that is going to do it for the Thursday night slate. If this video helped you out, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. If you are listening on audio, please rate and review. Again, it helps me out a ton. I really do appreciate it when you guys do that. Now, let's go ahead and end the video there. But I do want to remind you guys, we are going to be back for the Friday night, Saturday night slates the rest of this week. We've also got weekly golf content that released yesterday. Check that out, as well as our weekly NFL content that is going to come out tomorrow as well. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you check out all of our content if you want some help and information for all these different sports, all these different DFS slates. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Like I said, hopefully I gave you guys all the information you need to build some winning lineups here for this Thursday slate. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you next time.